What if the thing haunting you at night wasn't just a bad dream, but a door you accidentally opened? When Alex moves into a cheap apartment on the edge of town, he doesn't expect much until the shadows begin to shift, the walls start whispering, and sleep becomes a terrifying prison. Unknowingly, he awakens something ancient, something hungry, and each time he closes his eyes, it gets closer. This isn't just another ghost story. This is the story that watches you back. Get ready to enter the in-between, where sleep ends and true terror begins. Have you ever had sleep paralysis? That terrifying moment where you're awake, aware, and completely unable to move, trapped inside your own body, helpless and watched by something you can't quite see. For Alex, it started like that. A few restless nights, a dark figure in the corner, a whisper behind the wall. But what began as a common sleep disorder quickly spiraled into something far more sinister, something ancient, intelligent, and deliberate. In this 1-hour psychological horror tale, you'll follow Alex into the depths of a haunted apartment that hides more than just creaky floorboards and faded wallpaper. There's a hidden room sealed, away for years, a child who vanished without a trace, and a shadow woman who doesn't just visit your dreams, she feeds on them. As Alex unravels the secrets of apartment 3B, he discovers a truth more horrifying than he could imagine. Once you've seen her, she sees you too. Each chapter of this story pulls you deeper into a world where sleep becomes a curse, and every reflection could be a doorway. Are you ready to experience the horror that blurs the line between dreams and reality? Grab your headphones, turn down the lights, and whatever you do, don't fall asleep. The sky was a washed-out gray the day Alex arrived at his new apartment, the kind of sky that felt heavy with secrets. Cold wind brushed through the empty trees, rattling the last of the brittle leaves. The neighborhood was oddly quiet, tucked away on the edge of town where the streetlights flickered and the sidewalks cracked like forgotten memories. Alex parked his beat-up sedan in front of the weathered 3-story building, staring up at it with a mixture of relief and unease. The place wasn't much, but it was his. A new start. After the breakup, the job switch, and months of couch surfing, this little corner of the world seemed like a blessing. Still, something about it made his stomach twist. The building had character, sure, but not the good kind. The bricks were chipped, stained by years of rain and time. Vines crawled up the sides like veins, and a rusty fire escape clung to the back like an afterthought. The air smelled faintly of damp earth and something else he couldn't quite name. Something musty and old, like books that should have stayed shut. Apartment 3B was on the top floor. As Alex hauled his boxes up the narrow staircase, the woo groaned beneath his feet, and every step echoed like it was announcing his arrival to something listening. The hallway was dim, even during the day, and lined with faded wallpaper that peeled at the corners. A buzzing overhead light flickered just outside his door. Mr. Finch, the landlord, was waiting for him. He was an odd, skeletal man with paper-thin skin and a voice like dry leaves scraping across pavement. "Alex, right," he rasped, offering a limp handshake. "Welcome to Greystone Apartments. It's not much, but it's quiet." Alex gave a polite smile and nodded. "Quiet's what I need." Finch's eyes twitched toward the ceiling, then back to Alex. "Good, just, try to keep the noise down at night. Some things here don't like noise." Alex frowned. "Some things?" The old man's lips curled into a crooked smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You'll see. Or maybe you won't." And with that, he handed over the key and shuffled away, muttering something under his breath that Alex couldn't make out. The apartment itself was small, but not terrible. 1. Bedroom, a cramped kitchen, a living area that barely fit his second-hand couch, and a scratched coffee table. The walls were painted a pale yellow, though time had turned them more of a sickly beige. The windows were narrow, offering a view of the alley and a dying tree that bent unnaturally to one side. Still, it was peaceful. Empty. A blank page. Alex unpacked. He tried to ignore the strange creaking from the floorboards, the way the shadows seemed to stretch just a little too far, even during daylight. He chalked it up to nerves, to the stress of change, to old building weirdness. That night, as he lay in bed under a pile of blankets, he noticed the cold. No matter how high he turned the radiator, the chill lingered. It wasn't the kind of cold that made you shiver. It was the kind that crawled beneath your skin and made your teeth ache. He wrapped himself tighter and closed his eyes. Then came the noise. Faint, like a whisper behind the wall. He held his breath, listening. Nothing. Just the house settling, he told himself. Old pipes, wind through the windows. But as he drifted off, just on the edge of sleep, he thought he heard it again. A soft scratching, like fingernails on wood, or maybe it was just a dream. It happened 3 nights after the move. Alex had finally begun to settle in. The boxes were mostly unpacked, the fridge stocked with cheap frozen meals and black coffee. He even found a quiet rhythm to the days. Wake up, work his new IT job remotely, go for a jog around the nearby park, then wind down with an old movie or a book before bed. But sleep had been strange. It came fast and heavy, like sinking into tar, and when it came, it brought with it dreams that didn't feel like dreams at all. Dreams where the apartment looked almost the same, but not quite. The corners were darker. The walls seemed to breathe. And sometimes in the distance, he thought he heard footsteps pacing just beyond his locked door. That 3rd night, it escalated. He had fallen asleep on his side, his laptop still humming faintly on the nightstand. Around 3:30 a.m., Alex's eyes shot open. He was awake, but something was wrong. His body wouldn't move. Panic rose in his chest as he tried to lift his arms, turn his head, even wiggle his fingers, but nothing responded. He was frozen in place, pinned to the mattress by some unseen force. His breath hitched, his heart raced, and his eyes darted around the room. Then he saw it. In the far corner, just beside the closet door, something was standing in the shadows. Tall, still, watching. It wasn't just a shape. It was aware. He felt its attention like a weight pressing against his skull. It had no features that he could make out, just the outline of a figure darker than the room itself. Its presence felt cold, ancient, and utterly wrong. Alex wanted to scream, to cry, to beg for it to go away, but his throat was locked shut. The figure moved, not with footsteps, but in a slow, gliding shift, closer to the foot of the bed. A low hum filled the air, just below the threshold of hearing. The room felt like it was vibrating. The lights didn't flicker, they pulsed. Time itself seemed to stretch like elastic. And then, it vanished. Just like that, the paralysis broke. Alex shot up, gasping like a drowning man breaching the surface. His chest heaved, his shirt soaked with sweat, and the air in the room suddenly felt breathable again. He sat there in the dim light for a long time, staring at the corner. Nothing was there. Just his coat hanging on the wall. Just the quiet hum of his laptop. Just the echo of a nightmare that still clung to the edges of his mind. He didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, Alex tried to shake it off. He searched sleep paralysis online over a mug of coffee, scrolling through pages of clinical explanations. The brain wakes up before the body. Perfectly natural. Happens to lots of people. It didn't feel natural. Not the way that thing had watched him. Not the way it had moved. Still, he wanted to believe the science. He needed to. That day dragged. Every shadow felt too long. Every creak of the apartment too sharp. When night returned, Alex double-checked every lock, turned on his bedside lamp, and left a podcast playing on low volume, just to keep the silence away. But silence, it turned out, didn't need permission to enter. It came back. Even earlier, this time. Alex had only just fallen asleep when his eyes snapped open again. The paralysis returned, swift and brutal. A thick pressure settled on his chest like someone had dropped a sack of wet sand on top of him. And once more, it was there. This time, closer. The shadow stood at the side of the bed, its head tilted slightly like it was studying him. It didn't breathe, didn't blink. It just watched. A soft ringing started in his ears. Then, he heard it. A voice whispering low and broken. "You shouldn't be here." Alex's throat clenched, his eyes watered. The figure leaned in, its face just inches from his. He still couldn't see features, just darkness. But in that darkness, he felt something looking back. Something hungry. And then, he blinked and it was gone. His body released with a jolt and he scrambled backward against the headboard, clutching his pillow like a shield. The room was empty. The shadows still. But he knew this was no dream. The next day, Alex called his doctor. The receptionist cheerfully scheduled a sleep study 3 weeks out. He almost laughed. 3 weeks? He didn't know if he'd survive. 3 more nights. As the sun dipped behind the trees that evening, the same sense of dread settled over him. Like the air was getting heavier, like something was coming, because Alex knew now. He wasn't dreaming. Something real was happening, and it wasn't done with him yet. The following days blurred together in a haze of caffeine, fear, and exhaustion. Alex had stopped sleeping. He tried. He tried, but every time he closed his eyes he felt it waiting. The paralysis. The shadow. That thick, icy silence just before the figure appeared. He couldn't bear it anymore, so he didn't sleep. Instead, he paced, read articles, drank cup after cup of coffee until his hands shook. But even while awake, the apartment had started to change. The temperature dropped randomly, especially at night. The lights dimmed at strange intervals. And sometimes when he passed the hallway mirror, he thought he saw a flicker of movement behind him. Then came the whispers. It started in the kitchen, while he stood at the sink trying to wash a mug he'd already cleaned twice. A soft voice, so faint he almost missed it, rose from somewhere behind the wall. "Don't go back to sleep." He froze. The faucet ran over his hands, but he didn't feel the water. He turned. The apartment was empty, silent. But the whisper had been real. He was sure of it. That night, he stayed up, seated on the living room couch with every lamp in the apartment turned on. His laptop was open in front of him, tabs scattered with articles and forums, sleep paralysis stories, shadow people, waking nightmares, entities from beyond the veil. It was a rabbit hole of horrors, but one thread stood out. A long, winding post on an obscure blog, written by someone who had experienced exactly what Alex was going through. They come at night. They wait for you to drift. It's not just paralysis. It's a crossing. They move between the layers of sleep and waking. And sometimes, if you hear them whisper, it means they've noticed you. Alex's blood ran cold. At the bottom of the post was a comment, barely visible, posted years later by someone anonymous. "Check the walls. There's more than you know." The next day, Alex walked the apartment like a detective. He knocked on the walls, measured corners, took pictures. He noticed that one wall in his bedroom, just behind the closet, sounded different. Not hollow exactly, but off. There was an extra few inches between his room and the hallway, space that shouldn't have existed. He pulled everything out of the closet and peeled back the old wallpaper, layer by layer. Behind it was bare wood, but on the lower half, where the baseboard should have been, there was a crack, a seam. He ran his fingers along it, heart thudding in his chest. Then he grabbed a flashlight, a screwdriver, and pried. The wall creaked. Then popped open. A small, narrow opening revealed itself, no bigger than a crawlspace. A hidden room. The air that spilled out was stale and cold, like a breath that had been held for years. Dust drifted like fog in the beam of his flashlight. The space was tight, barely enough to kneel inside, with rough wooden walls and a warped heater floor. But what caught his eye were the items scattered within. A child's stuffed bear, missing one eye. A faded, water-damaged photograph of a woman and a young girl standing in front of the very same building. And a notebook. Small, leather-bound, its pages curled with age. Alex took it with trembling hands and backed out of the crawlspace. The notebook was bizarre. The first half was filled with sketches, strange symbols, patterns that hurt his eyes if he stared too long, and drawings of dark figures with long limbs and empty faces. The second half was scrawled handwriting, frantic and uneven, sometimes written upside down or in the margins, but certain phrases repeated. "They come when I sleep." "It's watching me through the walls." "Whispers mean it's close." "The girl is still here." And on the very last page in large, trembling letters, "Don't close your eyes." Alex sat in stunned silence, the notebook heavy in his lap. His mind raced. The girl in the photo, the toys, the voice whispering, the shadows in his sleep. Had someone else lived here and gone through the same thing? Was this room a prison, a sanctuary, or worse? Had it been hers? That night, Alex didn't turn on the lights. He didn't play his usual podcast or drown himself in coffee. He sat in the middle of the living room, the notebook beside him, waiting. At 3:17 a.m., the whisper came again. Clearer this time. Female. Fragile. "Help me." His eyes widened. The voice was inside the apartment. He stood up slowly. The sound was coming from the bedroom. More precisely, from the closet. He approached cautiously, the floor cold beneath his feet. He opened the closet door and pointed his flashlight into the darkness. The crack in the back wall had opened wider. Alex knelt, heart thundering, and peered inside. This time, there was something else. A small handprint, smudged in the dust. Just below it, drawn into the wood with something sharp, were words scratched in a child's handwriting. "She's still here. But so is it." The next morning, sunlight filtered through the blinds like pale fingers, but it brought no comfort. Alex sat on the floor beside the open crawlspace, still in the same clothes, eyes bloodshot and heavy. He hadn't slept. Couldn't. Every time. He blinked too long. He heard her voice, the girl, calling from the walls. The whisper was soft, almost mournful, like it had been echoing in the dark for years. He stared at the handprint, the scratches in the wood, the cold breath of stale air seeping out like a slow exhale from something that had waited too long. He had to go in. Armed with a flashlight, gloves, and a thin scarf wrapped around his nose and mouth to block the dust, Alex pushed himself into the narrow crawl space. It groaned beneath his weight. The wood creaked like it hadn't held a human body in a very, very long time. The space beyond the opening was tight. Claustrophobic, really. He had to move on hands and knees, ducking beneath splintered beams and avoiding spiderwebs that stretched like gossamer veins across the small chamber. The smell was worse inside. Mold, rot, and something faintly metallic. Old blood? Rust? He didn't want to know. The walls were scratched, deep, frenzied marks that trailed in all directions. They weren't from furniture. These had been made by fingernails. A lot of them. He kept crawling. After what felt like forever, the narrow passage opened into a tiny, box-like room, barely 6 feet across. The walls were wood, the ceiling low, and the only source of light came from his flashlight beam bouncing off the dust. In the center sat a child's mattress, no bigger than a crib, stained and decayed, with an old patchwork blanket still folded neatly on top. Beside the bed was a small wooden shelf, its corners chewed and warped. Toys sat upon it, old and forgotten. A headless doll, a plastic horse missing 2 legs, a wind-up music box shaped like a carousel. Alex picked it up with trembling fingers. It was cold, far colder than anything else in the room. He wound it once and let it go. A slow, distorted lullaby trickled out. The notes dragged, warbled, like they were underwater. Halfway through the tune, the music stopped. Just stopped. Silence returned, heavy and unnatural. Then, from behind him, a whisper. Soft, urgent. She's coming. Alex spun around, hitting his head on the low ceiling. The flashlight shook in his hand as he scanned the small space. No one was there. But the air changed. The cold grew sharper, like ice forming just behind his skin. The walls creaked. The mattress shifted slightly as if something had moved. He scrambled back, heart thundering. But as he did, the beam of his flashlight caught something on the wall opposite the bed. More scratches. But these weren't random. They formed letters, words, a message. Don't let her out. Beneath the message, a hand-drawn circle was carved into the floor. Inside it were strange symbols, lines, curves, spirals, drawn in what looked like black wax or old ink. Or blood. It was a sigil, a seal, and it had been broken. The edges of the circle were smudged, rubbed raw by desperate fingers. Alex stared, horrified as realization crashed over him. This wasn't just a hidden room, it was a prison. As he backed out of the space, his thoughts reeled. Who had sealed this room? Was it the girl, her mother, someone trying to trap the entity that haunted his dreams? And why was the seal broken? Had it failed? Or had someone opened it? By the time he emerged back into his bedroom, the morning light had dimmed. Gray clouds gathered outside, turning the apartment into a shadowed shell. Alex shut the closet door but couldn't bring himself to cover the crawlspace again. It felt like closing the lid on something alive. He sat on the edge of the bed, shaking, notebook in his lap. He flipped back to the page with the final message. Don't close your eyes. He now understood why. It wasn't sleep that brought the Shadow Woman. It was surrender. Every time he drifted off, he stepped closer to her, and now that the seal had been broken, she didn't just exist in dreams anymore. She was in the apartment, in the walls, in the mirrors. Closer. That night, Alex didn't bother with lights or noise. He sat in the living room in silence, the music box beside him, the notebook open. He had questions, so many, but no answers. At exactly 3:17 a.m., the apartment changed. The shadows grew long and twisted. The air thickened. and from the bedroom came the soft creak of the closet door slowly opening. Alex didn't move. A whisper, just behind him. "You shouldn't have gone in." The voice lingered in the air long after it had stopped. Alex sat frozen on the edge of his couch, pulse thudding so loudly in his ears he could barely hear the silence that followed. The closet, daughter in the bedroom, was fully open now. He hadn't seen it move, but he felt it, like the apartment itself had exhaled. He gripped the flashlight like a weapon, even though he knew it was useless against the kind of thing that whispered through walls and slipped into dreams. Still, he stood, legs stiff, and moved toward the bedroom. Every step made the floor creak under his weight, and the shadows seemed to lean in, listening. When he reached the door, he paused. There was no sound, no whisper, no breathing, just the quiet hum of something waiting. He stepped inside. The bedroom felt colder than the rest of the apartment, like a meat locker. Frost had crept along the window panes, spiderwebbing the glass in sharp, delicate lines. The closet door was wide open, revealing the dark mouth of the crawl space. The opening looked different somehow, wider, deeper. It was as if the room had grown from the inside. Alex shined his light into the crawl space but didn't go in. He didn't need to. She was already here. A faint sound, the soft shuffle of bare feet on wood. Then, in the corner of the room, near the closet, she appeared. A little girl, no older than 8, standing quietly in the shadows. She wore a white nightgown, tattered at the hem, her hair long and dark, tangled over her face like a curtain. Her skin was pale, not sickly but colorless, as if light passed right through her. She didn't glow. She wasn't ghostly in the floating, transparent sense. She was there, real, and impossibly still. Alex's voice caught in his throat. Are you Lily?" The girl didn't speak at first. Her head tilted just slightly, like she was listening to something far away. Then she nodded. "I found your room," Alex whispered. "I found the notebook." Her voice, when it came, was soft and brittle, like dried leaves. "You weren't supposed to open it." He felt the sting of guilt, but confusion outweighed it. "I didn't know. I didn't understand. Who was in?" "They're with you? Who is she?" The girl didn't answer. Instead, her eyes, deep, dark, impossibly sad, lifted to his. "She lives in the in-between," Lily said, "between sleeping and waking, between your thoughts. She hides in silence, in stillness." Alex swallowed hard. "The shadow woman." Lily nodded once. "My mother brought her, by accident. She was sick. The dreams got worse. She thought she could trap her inside the circle." "The sigil," Alex said. "The one in the crawl space." It worked, for a while. Alex stepped closer, careful not to frighten her. "What happened?" The girl's expression changed. An emotion flashed across her pale face that looked too old for a child. "Regret." She got out. She whispered. "How?" he asked. Lily looked directly at him then. "You opened the door." Alex stumbled back, a step, heart racing. "No, I didn't know. I didn't mean to." "She doesn't care what you meant," Lily said, her voice distant, like it was coming from two places at once. "She's awake now. The more you see her, the more real she becomes. She feeds on your fear, your attention." Alex felt dizzy. His thoughts raced. How do I stop it? How do I put her back? But Lily only stared at him in silence. And then she did something strange. She flickered, like a candle flame in wind. A split second, she disappeared entirely, replaced by a shadow that was taller, darker, with elongated limbs and a mouth that stretched far too wide. Then the girl was back. Alex gasped. "She's inside you?" "No," Lily said, her voice colder now. "She's around me. I'm her cage, her echo. She lives in the cracks." Alex backed away. "Why show yourself to me? Why now?" Lily's eyes were glistening now, not with tears, but something like condensation, as if her body were freezing from within. "Because I'm fading, and you're the only one who's seen her twice and survived." He didn't feel lucky. He felt marked. Suddenly, the lights in the apartment cut out. Total darkness. The flashlight flickered, then died, plunging the room into ink. In the pitch black, Alex could hear her. Not Lily. Her. A low, dragging sound, like cloth sliding across wood. Then the faintest creak of weight shifting at the foot of the bed. The air thickened again. Heavy. Rotten. Familiar. Alex reached out blindly, whispering, "Lily." But Lily didn't answer. Instead, a voice that was not Lily's slipped into his ear. "You brought me back." A hand brushed his shoulder, cold, skeletal. He turned to run. The flashlight buzzed back to life for a moment as he stumbled into the hallway, casting a fleeting image in the mirror. A tall woman, her face an empty void, standing just behind him, watching. Smiling. Alex didn't remember locking the door behind him. He didn't remember collapsing onto the kitchen floor or crawling into the bathroom where he now sat, knees to chest, flashlight trembling in his hands. But he remembered her. That face, or lack of one, burned into his memory. A face like an open void. Not blank, but empty. A darkness that pulled at his thoughts like a vortex, eating sound, light, even time. She had touched him, and nothing in his life had ever felt more real. He stayed in the bathroom until the sky outside turned silver and birds began to sing. But even in the daylight, the apartment felt wrong, like a stage after a show, quiet, still, but something unseen still lingering in the wings. Alex emerged cautiously. Every step felt like trespassing in, a place that no longer belonged to him. His reflection in the mirror startled him, pale, wide-eyed, and hollow. There were bruises beneath his eyes now, not from injury, from draining, as if something had started pulling him out from the inside. He splashed cold water on his face, but it didn't help. That's when he noticed something new on the hallway wall. A smear of black, thin, oily lines forming a curve. He stepped closer. A symbol, drawn hastily, like someone had scratched it with trembling fingers. It was one of the same symbols from the notebook. More appeared over the next hour. On the fridge, the closet door, the floorboards. Always faint, always fading when he stared too long, like the apartment was bleeding memory. Something was unraveling. By noon, Alex couldn't take it anymore. He gathered the notebook, the stuffed bear, and the photograph he'd found in the crawlspace and went straight to the landlord. Mr. Finch lived in a ground-floor unit that smelled of cat litter and boiled cabbage. He opened the door halfway, his eyes narrowing the moment he saw Alex. "I need answers," Alex said, holding up the notebook. "Now," Finch sighed, his bony hands tightening on the edge of the door. "You shouldn't have gone looking. That room was sealed for a reason." "You knew," Alex snapped. "You knew something was in there. Why didn't you warn me?" "I did," Finch said, eyes darting toward the stairs. "I told you not. To make noise, not to disturb things. That's more than I ever told the others." Alex froze. "Others?" Finch's face tightened. "You think you're the first to hear her? She's been here for decades. Since before I took over this place. It's not the building. It's her. She's anchored to it. To that child. Every so often someone opens the wrong door. Someone listens to the whispers. And then, someone disappears. Alex's breath hitched. Disappears? Finch nodded slowly. There was a girl, long ago, and her mother. The mother started having episodes, sleepwalking, screaming at things that weren't there. Said something was feeding on her dreams. She drew the symbols, sealed the crawl space, but the girl vanished not long after. Alex held up the photo. This girl? Finch glanced at it. Yes, Lily. She's still here, Alex said. She spoke to me, warned me. She's trying to fight it. Finch's eyes darkened. She's part of it now. You think you're helping her, but you're just walking deeper into the trap. That thing, whatever it is, feeds on attention, fear, curiosity. Every time you think about it, it becomes stronger, more real. Alex was shaking. How do I stop it? Finch hesitated. There's only one way I know, he said. You leave. You never look back. You pretend none of this happened. Alex stared at him. And Lily? She's not your responsibility, Finch said softly. She hasn't been a little girl in a long time. Alex left the apartment building feeling like a ghost. The streets were bright and noisy, full of life, but it all felt too loud, too fake. He watched people sip coffee, laugh into phones, walk dogs, as if the world was still normal. As if something ancient and hungry hadn't reached out from the dark and touched him. He couldn't walk away. Not yet. That night, he returned to the apartment with a plan. He would go back into the crawl space. He would redraw the seal, correctly this time. He had taken photos of the symbols. He had studied the notebook. If Lily's mother could trap the thing once, he could do it again. Maybe. He waited until 3 a.m. The lights were off. The apartment was dead quiet. Alex knelt on the floor before the crawl space, his chalk trembling in his hand. He drew slowly, carefully, breathing through clenched teeth as he completed the symbol. The circle, the spiral, the jagged runes that formed the edges. Each stroke felt heavier than the last. The air thickened, grew colder. Something was waking up. He lit a small candle at each corner of the sigil. His voice trembled as he whispered the phrases written in the margins of the notebook. In silence, stay. In shadow, sleep. In light, recede. In mark, be bound. The final word caught in his throat. A chill moved through the room. And then, from the closet, she emerged. Not Lily, her, the shadow woman. She didn't crawl or step. She flowed, like smoke given form. Her limbs elongated unnaturally, joints bending at wrong angles. Her mouth opened wide, wider than should be possible, spilling a sound like static and weeping all at once. Alex stood his ground. She reached the edge of the circle and stopped. The seal held. Her head snapped toward him. No eyes, no face, but she saw him, and she was furious. The apartment shook. The candles flickered, and then, from the darkness behind her, Lily appeared. The little girl stood just beyond the seal, her hands clasped tightly. "Finish it," she whispered. "Say her name." Alex stared at the notebook. One final word written in faded ink. A name. Forgotten. Forbidden. He read it aloud. The room exploded. In silence, the woman screamed, a sound that tore through the walls and rattled the floor. The shadows were sucked inward, spiraling into the circle like water down a drain. The apartment groaned as if it were alive. And then, It was over, just like that. The temperature rose, the air cleared, the lights flickered back on. The closet was empty. The seal remained. Alex collapsed to the floor, gasping, shaking. He looked up. Lily was gone. Only the stuffed bear remained on the floor beside the circle. Alex didn't remember falling asleep, but when he woke, the apartment was silent. No birdsong, no creaking pipes, no hum from the refrigerator. Just a vacuum of sound, so complete it felt like the world had stopped turning. He blinked against the early gray light bleeding through the windows. The seal, chalky and crude but intact, remained in front of the closet. The stuffed bear still lay nearby, one glass eye reflecting the faint morning glow. The shadow woman was gone, and yet he felt no peace, only emptiness. The day passed slowly. Tried to eat, but the food turned to ash in his mouth. Tried to leave, but something kept him tethered, a sensation he couldn't name, like walking away from an open book with one chapter left unread. There was no sign of Lily. No more whispers, not even a breath of cold. But deep down, Alex knew. It wasn't over. Not really. It had never been about exorcising the entity. It had been about surviving her attention. That evening, he packed a bag. He would leave at dawn, move into a motel, take time to think. But just one more night. One more night to be sure. As the sun dipped low and painted the apartment in copper and rust, Alex stood by the window, watching shadows lengthen. The trees outside swayed with a slow rhythm, like something breathing beneath the earth. At 11:11 p.m., the silence cracked. A sound, a single, deliberate knock, came from the inside of the closet door. Alex froze. The seal was still there. The chalk had faded slightly, but the lines remained unbroken. He approached slowly, heart pounding. Another knock, this time softer. He opened the closet door. Nothing, just the darkness of the crawlspace, yawning like a mouth that had tasted too much. He didn't step in. Instead, he whispered, "Lily." The darkness stirred, and out of the silence, a voice, so familiar it stung, whispered back, "You broke the seal when you fell asleep." Alex staggered back. No, I didn't. But he had. He must have. The seal was meant to be guarded by wakefulness, by focus. That was the final line in the notebook, the one he hadn't understood at the time. The body seals. The mind sustains. He'd closed his eyes. He'd let go. And now, she was free again. The apartment began to change. The walls bled shadows, inky tendrils snaking across the floor and ceiling. The air thickened, warm now, but foul, like a room sealed too long, heavy with rot and secrets. The lights died one by one. From every corner of the apartment, the shadows gathered, swelling, merging, until she stepped through. Not from the crawlspace, not from the walls, from the reflection in the hallway mirror. The glass rippled as she emerged, fluid and unnatural, her limbs bending like smoke in reverse. Her body no longer resembled a human silhouette, her head tilted in sharp, twitching motions, and her faceless gaze locked onto him. Alex didn't run this time. He stood still, because he finally understood the truth. She hadn't come for him. Not at first. She'd come for Lily. And Lily had used him as a vessel to finish the work her mother never could, to lure the shadow into a new body. A living one. Lily appeared beside the mirror, but she wasn't a child anymore. Her body shimmered between forms, flickering like a dying bulb. Child, shadow, void. Her voice was layered now. Her own, her mother's, and hers. You let her in. Now we stay. The bear on the floor, caught. Fire without flame. Smoke curling silently upward. Alex staggered back as the floorboards beneath him split, revealing not earth, not wood, but depth. An impossible drop into swirling darkness, dotted with shapes moving just out of sight. Hands rose from the floor, dozens of them. Small, pale, childlike. Grasping. He fought, kicking, screaming as they grabbed his legs, pulling him down. He clawed. At the wall, the floor, the air, but gravity no longer worked the way it should. And in the final moment, as the apartment collapsed inward like a dying lung, he heard Lily's voice one last time. Don't be afraid. We dream together now. Sometime later. Greystone Apartments stood empty. Mr. Finch retired quietly, handing the building over to a distant management company. The listing disappeared from rental websites. Calls went unanswered. No one lives in Unit 3B, but sometimes, late at night, neighbors walking past hear something strange. Faint crying, like a man lost in sleep, or the music of a broken lullaby, echoing through the walls. And if you press your ear to the door, you might hear a whisper from deep inside. Don't close your eyes. Weeks passed. Seasons shifted. Leaves turned and fell. Snow began to crust the rooftops in the sleepy town where Greystone Apartments stood like a forgotten tombstone among rows of aging buildings. Apartment 3B remained dark. The windows never lit. The mailbox remained stuffed with yellowing flyers and unopened bills. Rent went unpaid, and no forwarding address was ever filed. Alex Winters had simply vanished. Officially, his disappearance was labeled unexplained. There was no forced entry, no signs of struggle. His car was parked in its usual spot, keys on the hook by the door, laptop still open, a cup of coffee sitting cold beside the sink. The police filed their report with reluctant shrugs. A young man, new to the area, quiet and solitary. Perhaps he snapped, they said. Ran off, got into something bad. The world had no shortage of missing people. No one mentioned the drawings on the walls, the chalk symbols etched into the floor. The child's bear, burned but untouched by flame, sitting neatly on the mattress in the hidden crawlspace. No one wanted to explain those things, so they didn't. The new property manager, a man named Darren with slick hair and colder eyes, listed Unit 3B online 2 months later. The photos were retouched, the closet sealed. The listing description was bland. Charming, top-floor unit in a vintage complex. Quiet neighbors, city views. There were inquiries. The rent was low. One young woman, a grad student named Elise, moved in just before winter break. She was friendly, bookish, with a collection of antique dolls and a passion for studying sleep cycles. She mentioned once that she hadn't dreamed in years. That changed quickly. Within her first week, she began waking up in the middle of the night, breathless, unable to move. She chalked it up to stress. New place, thin walls, city noise, nothing serious. But then came the whispers. Low, female. Always around 3:17 a.m. Help me. You shouldn't have opened it. She's behind you. One night, Elise noticed something strange in the mirror. Just a flicker. A movement. That didn't match her own. A figure, standing perfectly still behind her reflection. She turned around. Nothing, but when she looked back, the reflection was smiling. Elsewhere in town, the disappearances continued. A jogger, a bartender, a girl, who left her friend's house at midnight and never made it home. No bodies were ever found, but each of them had one thing in common. Each had at some point entered Greystone Apartments. Delivery drivers, visiting friends, short-term renters, all of them were drawn in by something, and whatever it was, it always remembered. Mr. Finch, long since retired, lived alone in a nursing facility on the edge of town. Most days he said nothing, but on stormy nights he could be heard muttering in his sleep, "Don't let her out. She lives between." She waits for the ones who listen. In time, the town grew used to the legend. They called it a curse, a ghost story. Teenagers dared each other to touch the doorknob of 3B. Paranormal vloggers set up cameras in the hallway and filmed for hours, only to find their batteries drained and audio corrupted. No one stayed longer than a few nights, but the apartment never emptied. Shadows continued to move when no one was there, and sometimes, if you were very quiet and very still, you might hear the soft music of a carousel drifting through the walls. A memory caught in the static. Somewhere, in a place not quite asleep and not quite real, Alex stands in the middle of a gray field. The sky is colorless. The air doesn't move. Lily stands beside him. Her eyes are hollow now. Her voice has no echo. "Are we dead?" he asks. She shakes her head. "No, not dead. Just forgotten." Behind them, the shadow woman stirs. Epilogue. To this day, no one stays in apartment 3B longer than a week. No one remembers Alex Winters. But if you ever visit that building, if you're foolish or curious or unlucky, and you find yourself standing in front of that door, don't knock, don't listen, and whatever you do, don't fall asleep. If this story gave you chills, hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next terrifying tale. Share this video with your friends, but don't blame us if they can't sleep tonight. And tell us in the comments, have you ever seen something during sleep paralysis you couldn't explain?